It was a rainy October night. My friend Grace's 16th birthday, to be exact. We had a party, then some of us spent the night at her house afterwards. She lived and still does live on the open Ohio countryside with some forest surrounding her home. There were 5 of us: Grace, Sarah, Maddie, Luca, and me. It was about 10 p.m. at this point, and Grace came up with an idea. "I have an old clubhouse out in the woods. How about we spend the night out there?" she asked. We were hesitant at first, but we went along with it after being assured that we could run electricity to the clubhouse to make sure we could have light. We gathered our belongings, some snacks, and loaded up on her parents' golf cart and drove to the edge of the woods. Sarah, Grace, and Maddie all sat in the front, while Luca and I sat in the back seat holding all the bags. The forest was a good quarter of a mile from the house, so if we were in danger, there was no help coming to us. We unloaded and parked the golf cart along a path that led into the clubhouse. After a few minutes of walking, we came up to it. Grace went around back and powered a generator which required gasoline, which she luckily had filled a few weeks prior to her party. She unlocked the door and we all entered the tiny clubhouse. It wasn't small, but it wasn't large in size either. We turned on the lights and dusted off the chairs and threw our stuff on the floor. Sarah closed the curtains of the windows while Maddie prepared her blankets on the floor. "There's a power outlet on the wall to charge your phones," said Grace, pointing to the wall. Our phones had no reception out in the middle of the woods, so they were pretty useless. We all eventually settled and Grace locked the door. We sat in a circle and played games like Truth or Dare and Cards Against Humanity. We noticed someone had left a window open and rainwater was coming through it. Sarah got up to shut it and noticed something peculiar. "Grace, come here," she said, with a startled expression. "What's up?" she replied, approaching Sarah from the floor. She pointed at something outside the window, and an eerie silence fell on the clubhouse. I stood up and looked out the window, and directly across from us was a large oak tree, and on it was a wooden cross. It was nailed to it, but this was no ordinary cross. It was upside down. The rain was still falling outside, so Grace grabbed her phone and used its flashlight to see. She unlocked the door and walked outside. She pulled the cross off the tree and chucked it deeper into the woods. "You maniac," said Maddie. "There could be Satanists around here," she hissed at Grace. She shook her head. As she entered the room, Grace said, "Maddie, there aren't Satanists around here. It was probably just someone pulling a prank, probably my brother," she said, locking the door behind her. It was 1 a.m. by this time, so we all decided to go to sleep. I slept on the small love seat while Maddie, Sarah, and Luca slept on the floor. Grace slept adjacent from me on the other side of the love seat. Around 1:30, Sarah began crying at random. Luca and I woke up and asked her what had happened. "I saw a woman. She was wearing all white, and then she grabbed me by the neck and hung me from a tree," she said. Sarah was whiter than a ghost, but I reassured her that it was just a dream. I did remember reading, however, that demons and evil spirits can cause nightmares in people who are vulnerable, but I dismissed it as a simple nightmare. Around 3 a.m., Maddie woke up and noticed Sarah was missing, so we all woke up. Her phone was plugged into the wall and her stuff was still by her blankets. We noticed right away that the door to the clubhouse was open and it was raining much harder now. We all grabbed our phones and got dressed while we waited for Grace to retrieve the golf cart. As soon as she got it, I hopped into the front while Luca and Maddie sat in the back. "She's probably just messing with us," I said. "I don't know. Sarah isn't the kind of person who would intentionally scare us like this," Luca said. Grace drove down the path going deeper into the woods. Maddie and Luca were yelling her name and searching for her. We came to a spot in the road where we all had to get out and walk from there. At this point, we were a good mile from Grace's house. We all stuck together, terrified of what could have happened to our friend. The rain did die down greatly, so our visibility cleared up, and suddenly we heard a noise from in front of us. I panicked and ran behind Maddie. "Don't be such a wuss, Ellen," she said. I scoffed, but stayed behind her. We came upon a tree, and underneath it, it was Sarah in the fetal position, rocking back and forth. This was all like something out of a horror movie. "Sarah?" Luca said. Sarah said something faintly. She called me. Here. She called me here, she replied. She died here, she continued. She stood up and ran over to Luca and hugged her. It hurts, make it stop, she cried out, sobbing into Luca's shoulder. What do you mean, Sarah? I asked. She let go of Luca, then looked at me. Elizabeth wants me to. Elizabeth, she wants me to hurt you. This is when we knew that this was more than just a simple practical joke. We loved her, but Sarah was not the kind of person who could pull something like this off and be serious about it. We knew this was something unholy affecting her. This was real. Sarah, what is she saying? I asked. She began sobbing again. She keeps flashing images in my head of me killing you guys. She wants me to hurt you all, and God, it hurts, she said, still sobbing. We all walked her back to the golf cart and then returned to the clubhouse and got her stuff. Grace shut down the generator, then locked up the tiny clubhouse, and she drove us back to the house. We all slept in the living room of her home. The next morning, we all ate breakfast and asked Sarah what happened, and to our surprise, she had no idea what we were talking about. She dismissed it as a simple question, but the rest of us knew what had really happened. This event was 9 months ago. Since then, Maddie and I did some research and discovered an old farm family that lived on the property back when Ohio was a new state. A woman named Elizabeth hung herself deep within the woods after the loss of her daughter. Since then, reports of occultists and other people have been seen practicing dark rituals in the forest. It explains why the cross was hung upside down on a tree. Sarah, however, is not the only person to have experienced this event. In the 1930s through the 1970s, there were 3 deaths on the property, all of them suicides. Today, this has led me to believe that some sort of demonic entity resides there and has claimed the lives of 3 individuals. Since this event, I have returned to the home multiple times, but I am hesitant to stay the night. Sarah, to this day, still had little recollection of the event. She has since then gained fragments of memories back of what happened that night. She refuses to return to the woods, despite her having little recollection of what happened that evening.